Well, hello there. My name is Dan Skipbound, and once again, this is the 52 must-see movies and why they matter. And with me to co-host this episode of The Thin Man is Mr. Andrew Cabral. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing well, Dan. Glad to be back here. We're talking about one of the earliest films on our list, all the way back in 1934. This is a film that I don't think many people know of, but if you're a kind of a super classic cinephile, it's one you know very well, apparently. So it's going to be very interesting us talking about and why it's so essential.
Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. I was not aware of the Thin Man series, and it wasn't because I didn't want to be aware of it. It just I watch a lot of classic films. I just did not know about the Thin Man series, so I'm just glad that it's in the book. So I have an opportunity to watch it and talk about it with you. So and I know you've watched it before, so you're pretty much you kind of know our main characters, Nick and Nora Charles, played by William Powell and Myrna Loy. Talk about those two, in the cast. We got a lot of actors and actresses that I'm not really familiar with here. Except, once I saw that it was William Powell and Myrna Loy, I was like, okay. They're Nick and Nora Charles. They're the main leads in the film, and they're a couple. Obviously, I got Maureen O'Sullivan plays Dorothy. Nat Pendleton plays Detective Guild. Um, I have William Henry plays Gilbert. Henry Wadsworth plays Tommy. Mina Gombo plays Mimi, and Porter Hall plays Macaulay. Do these people, obviously you've seen the movie a couple times, so you know these actors. I mean, what do you think about the cast and obviously the leads are?
Yeah, the highlight of this is of course William Powell and Myrna Loy. They're two, I would say, stalwarts in classic Hollywood era. They pop up a lot in movies. They're very much a favorite of many classic film fans, and they are the highlights of this movie when it comes to the acting. Maureen O'Sullivan, I'm aware of, but not so much the others. Um, it's I'm sure they probably were in other films. I'm just not aware of what they've been in, but I know William Powell mostly for his role in another film around the same time in My Man Godfrey, which came out in 1936, and that is an amazing movie. I'm actually surprised that's not on this list as well. Myrna Loy is an actress I believe we've talked about before. I think she was in Best Years of Our Lives. I have to look that up. But she is another classic era. She was in Best Years of Our Lives. She was in Mr. Blanding Builds His Dream House with Cary Grant. She's, of course, in all of the Thin Man films because this is actually the start of a pretty long franchise of movies. This is the first in a six-part franchise or six-movie franchise. There were five sequels to this franchise, and four of them were directed by W.S. Van Dyke, or Woodbridge Strong Van Dyke is his proper long name, and it's very interesting how has to be one of the earliest franchises in movie history, especially American movies. There weren't really a lot of these franchises now back then. There's so many of them now. Over the years, it's kind of the big thing to do now in movies to make franchises out of really popular movies. And this first film was apparently extremely popular when it came out. So much they loved this film so much that they thought Myrna Loy and William Powell were a real life couple because their chemistry is so good in this movie which we will definitely be discussing.
Yeah, they really were great as I watched the movie and I went on towards the end of the movie, and I realized the chemistry and the bickering and they really seem like a husband and wife. The kind of the banter back and forth with each other, like, hey, go, you need to go investigate this murder. Nah, yeah, I'm not really interested. Yeah, she kept on, bugging him about investigating the murder in the movie. With that being said, we start off with them getting married, a marriage at the beginning of the movie. It starts off with the child, the daughter of Clyde Wynette. Clyde Wynette, his daughter, is getting married at the beginning of the movie, and he kind of, this guy comes to him, and he says, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Hey, get out of here. Leave me alone. I don't have time for you. Get out of here." No, sir. No, you're fired. Get out of here. Whatever. Get lost. Come to find out, that was the husband of his daughter who she's getting married to. And he's, "Oh man, I can't believe it. I just fired that guy." And he's like, no, you're not fired anymore. It's like, but it was kind of a weird way to start, right?
Yeah. What is interesting about the movie is it doesn't start out with our quote unquote main characters. We don't see the Charles couple until, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes into the movie. And even then they're kind of just dumped in on us at some, I believe it's like a party or something. What is interesting, that starts off, like Dan said, with this guy, Clyde Wynant, who I believe is some type of an inventor or something like that. He's kind of working in his workshop, building all kinds of things. And then, like, his daughter comes with her boyfriend saying, we want to get married. They basically were, that old traditional thing where you ask the father of the bride to get married for permission and whatnot. So he did that, and then of course he does. But what we learned is that he's also going away. Actually, he's going. I guess he's taking a trip somewhere, and before he goes, he wants to leave these bonds, or this money in these bonds, to his daughter. He's taken some cash with him. He's taken $1,000 in cash with him. His lawyer comes over, gives him the cash, and he also wants to leave these bonds for his daughter as a wedding gift. And he goes to his safe, and the bonds aren't there. And he asks the guy who's working in his shop. I believe the guy, we find out later that he's actually the bookkeeper. He, I guess, keeps all the finances. He's like, "Where are these bonds?" He's like, "Oh, the woman that you're." I believe he's married to her, or they're dating. I don't know. All I know is that he's divorced from his wife because he took up with his secretary, who is this woman.
Yeah, Mimi.
She's a focal point in this movie as well.
Yeah, Mimi is the one who she feels like.
Well, Mimi is his ex-wife.
Yeah.
The one that Julia Wolf, I believe, is the right. woman, is the secretary of the woman that he's seeing. He believes that she has the bonds, so she goes home, and of course we kind of learn right away that she's probably not the most trustworthy person. She's there entertaining some guy that we learn more about later. This kind of shady individual.
Yeah.
And what we learn is that she's taken these 50, I believe he said $50,000 in bond money, and he wants it back. He is angry. He wants it back, and she can only offer him 25,000. She only has 25,000 on hand. I guess she spent the other 25,000 on something, and he gets really mad, and he leaves to go to this nightclub, I guess, to retrieve the money from the person he believes has it. And that's where we transition from this little story here into where we see the William Powell and Myrna Loy characters, Nick and Nora Charles.
Yeah, they're just, kind of living their life, and all of a sudden we find out that somebody has been murdered, and it ends up being Julia Wolf. Natalie Moorhead portrays Julia Wolf. And so that's when Inspector Guild gets into it. He's the police lieutenant who has to investigate all this. And Nick really, to be honest with you, doesn't really want to be involved in it. He just kind of wants to go through and have his little drinking party.
He's retired.
He's retired.
He's retired. Basically, he used to be a private investigator, and then he married Nora. He married Nora, who I believe her father passed away, and and she got left all of the inheritance. So they're wealthy. They're very rich. So there's no need for really either of them to work anymore. But she's kind of bored just living that rich, swanky life of doing nothing all the time, and he's kind of okay with just being retired, and he doesn't want to be a PI anymore. But she kind of keeps coaxing him into it as the movie goes on because she wants to go along on this murder mystery kind of adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. So the lady that finds the dead body of Julie, well, she gets the cops involved and stuff. She ends up taking something off the dead body, but she doesn't tell anybody for quite a while. But it's a MacGuffin because we see it at the beginning of the movie, because Clyde Wynette's shop, the thing, he makes these metal chains, these metal things, and he's a shop owner of this manufacturing shop. And come to find out, Guild, he about the second or third person he goes to talk to, he says, "Hey, did you take something out of the woman's hand? Her hand looked like it was closed, and then somebody pried something out of the hand." And she's like, no, I didn't take anything out of the hand. But then eventually we find out she did take something out of the hand. She takes a chain. That's a key to the finding out who murdered her. But it's also something about Wynette himself. He's kind of a inventor and whatnot. So he's got money. And so his money, his children and his ex-wife and everybody kind of wants his money. Yeah. So when he leaves town, we just expect, okay, he's gone. And they keep referring to him. He went to this place, or he went to Allentown. He went here. He's here. Oh, we got a call from Wynette. Whatever. You know what I mean? So we're trying to figure out who and then we get all these other characters that start showing up.
What happens is the daughter, early on when we first get introduced to the Charleses, is at this party, and the daughter of that we saw in the previous scene runs into them, and apparently they're acquaintances. They're old friends. Apparently, Nick Charles did worked for her father earlier, years earlier, so they're acquainted. They know each other, and they have this relationship, this back and forth, and she asks him to look for her father, because her father's not missing, but he's been away for 3 months. No one knows really where he is. All we know is that he keeps he said that if he needs more money, he'll talk to his secretary, and then the secretary will get the money to him somehow. It's really kind of a mystery about where he is and what he's doing. And what happens is that he gets I believe the lawyer goes over to Charles's, and he gets a phone call saying, "Oh, he's back in town. He's back in town." So the Charles character, Nick Charles, calls the daughter and says, "Yeah, oh yeah, your father's fine. He's home. He's okay. I just heard. I just wanted to tell you." And that's when the ex-wife gets word of it, and she wants money because she got some money in the settlement, but all that money is gone. She kind of needs that money to live on. And so that's when she goes to the apartment. She sees the dead body, and then she takes what Dan referenced, which is the chain that was connected to his watch chain, basically, which would place him at the scene of the crime.
Yeah. So when that happens, we have to figure. We get all of these characters. I mean, we got. Let's reference some of these characters right now, Andrew. Some of these. We got Morelli. We get Gilbert. We got Nunheim. We get the Jurgensens. We get Tommy. we get, we get all Macaulay, we get all of these characters that, it's really kind of hard unless you're really paying attention to really figure out who the heck all these people are. You agree or disagree?
Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts to this movie, and the movie is very fast. It's only 90 minutes long, and it's extremely tight when it comes to screenplay, where every scene is pushing the mystery forward, revealing things, red herrings are coming up, and things like that. It's a great detective story. It really is involved, and with any great detective stories, it's like a maze. You're moving around trying to find your way through it, and these characters are part of that maze. And there are so many characters, and a couple of them are shady guys. A couple of them look like the killer.
Well,
And you would, if you were just looking at this aesthetically, like, okay, that guy looks like he's a killer. uh, and it's not the guy, and it's not the person I think that you would have guessed would be the killer by the end of the movie, which we'll definitely get to.
well,
Um,
one of the characters, Morelli, because they're questioning everybody, and this guy, he's kind of you talk about shady characters. He's kind of like he sounds like a freaking mobster, and he sounds like a bad guy. But he comes to Nick's hotel room, and he wants to talk to him. Is it Nick? I need your help. I want you to make sure that they know that I didn't do this.
yeah, he's not going about it the best way. He basically barges into uh, their hotel room on Christmas, I believe. And it's like past midnight after a party sequence, which was a great sequence, where 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 you get where you get the detective guy who's working on the case. He's there, and then the Dorothy shows up, and then her mother and her brother show up, and they're trying to get Nick Charles to get in this investigation somehow, and he's just trying to like work his way around them. It's a great and fun sequence. There's a lot of fun sequences in this movie like that, and the dialogue is so sharp and witty, and William Powell is just charming as ever on screen. But later that night, when he and his wife are about to go to bed, they get like a ring at the door, and he's like, and she goes to get it, and the guy wants to see Nick, and she goes, "Oh, I'll get him right. I'll get him. Just wait right here." No, instead he goes into the bedroom and points a gun at them, and he's trying to prove that he's innocent because he believes that Nick is now part of the case. He believes that he's part of the investigation, which he isn't at this point. Coincidentally, it's not until like after this situation where he actually really gets involved. And he walks in the bedroom, points the gun at them, and talks with them. And Nick's like, "I'm not part of the case. I don't know where this guy is, what he's doing. I don't know anything more than you do. I don't know why they would suspect you and whatnot, other than the fact that this guy probably has a criminal record." And what ends up happening is the cops end up coming because the cops have been tailing this guy the whole time. And once they see that he's gone here, they decide to kind of grab him. And it's a sequence where Nick grabs a pillow, but as he's grabbing the pillow, he knocks his wife down because she's in the line of fire. So if there's a stray bullet, she could get hit. So he knocks her down and accidentally knocks her out. And he ends up getting shot or grazed on the side, and then the cops tackle the guy, and then that's the end of that.
Yeah, so Morelli is the first guy that ends up in prison because they got like 3 or 4 different suspects here going. And then another guy that they end up leading because of this connection with the mob and whatnot. This guy named Nunheim, and so they go to Nunheim's apartment, and his wife and him are just not getting along, and they're arguing, and she throws a pan at him and whatnot. And then he ends up escaping through the fire escape.
Yeah, it's not a very happy marriage because I believe he was like having a little affair with Julia Wolf, I believe.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to say it in front of the detective and Nick Charles. And so he was kind of skirting around, like, yeah, I didn't really know her. You know, I knew her from afar. I said hi to her once in a while. Yeah. And then the wife's not buying any of this nonsense. So she ends up like packing up and leaving. And he's trying to chase after him, and the detective is holding him back. And he's like, "We're gonna talk to you right now. You're not going anywhere." And he's like, "Okay, just let me." He goes in the other room, locks the door, and then Nick goes to the phone, and he's ringing, he's dialing, and the detective asks him, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm just calling your place so that they can put a tail on him." And he's like, "Why?" "Because he's going down the fire escape." and he's like, "What?" So he goes in the other room. He's like, "Yeah, the guy's gone."
Yeah, and so, but the next time we see Nunheim, because he's calling his people, and he's like, "Hey man, they're catching on to me. I got to get out of here. You gotta hide me. You gotta."
Yeah, and then he tries to extort the guy for $5,000 more in hush money. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll meet you." Blah, 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 blah. And then, oh yeah, he goes and meets him, and then he gets shot. It's like he fell right into that trap.
Now we got our second dead body.
Yes.
And now we got 2 murders on our hands here. And so this basically, by this time, Nick and Nora Charles are full bore into this. And we still don't know where Clyde Wynette is. And so one of the things he decides to do is, you know what? I'm going to go to the shop, and I'm going to go see if I can see anything around the shop. Because even though when he's been out of town before, the shop hasn't been closed. Well, this time the shop is closed, and he thinks there's something fishy about the shop being closed. And of course, Nora's like, "All right, take the dog with you." Astra, the dog. Actually, it's a very famous Hollywood dog named Skippy.
Yes.
And Skippy the dog.
It's a wire-haired fox terrier. That's the breed.
I never seen a dog like that in my life. I was like, "What kind of dog is that?" Dog almost.
And it was in the first. I believe it was in the first 2 of the Thin Man movies. Just a quick aside. I believe is this after the point. I think this is after the point where they go. They go to visit the ex-wife, and she reveals to them the chain, right? And that's when they assume that Clyde is the murderer. And that's when you see kind of all these montage of like paper headlines and all that stuff. What is interesting about the movie is that Clyde Wynette is kind of a MacGuffin himself. Coincidentally, he is the Thin Man in this movie. Everybody thinks that the Thin Man is reference to the William Powell character, and it's not. The Thin Man is the Clyde Wynette character. William Powell even mentions this concept of a thin man with white hair. Like everybody's just gonna assume that a thin man with white hair is the culprit. And it kind of just a funny aside is that they name the rest of the movies like the Thin Man, all of them have like the Thin Man moniker in them, and none of that has to do with the actual characters in the movie. I just thought that's a funny aside.
Well, I mean, going off of the Cornetto trilogy, Cornetto is a candy bar or an ice cream bar.
It's ice cream.
Ice cream in the Edgar Wright. It's nothing to do with any of the films except it's an ice cream bar.
Yeah, so, except like they're eating. Except the characters will eat them in every movie.
Yeah.
So even like in the last one, they just show the wrapper.
Yeah, they show
they don't show the actual ice cream. Yeah. But that's an aside. But like Dan said,
the Thin Man is a reference, like you said.
Yeah. Later on in the movie, he decides to go to that shop. He takes Astra for a walk. Astra's a great, fun movie dog. There's been a lot of fun movie dogs in lots of movies. And they're kind of characters in and of themselves. The scene we mentioned earlier, where the guy comes into their bedroom, whatnot, like Astra like hides underneath like a bureau or something. He's like Charles even Nick says like, "Oh yeah, what a great guard dog you are," you know what I mean? And then and even early on when we first meet Astra, he's like running around the hotel looking for Nick, and he's always pulling on his leash so that the Nora character is always like trying to like keep a hold of him. He's really fun.
The dog is pretty cool. The dog is
And he's
definitely.
definitely part of the whole Thin Man mystique, if you will. He's in every movie. He's part of the family. He's part of the characters.
Yeah.
There's a great scene early on. It's a small thing with Astra. It actually takes place that Christmas morning where um, Nick is playing with a BB gun and he's shooting like balloons off of the Christmas tree. And then there's just a quick shot of the dog walking in, looking at him, and then he just walks away like, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with this noise. And it's really fun. That's a great scene. There's so much great dialogue between the Nick and Nora character in every scene. We're kind of glossing over it now, but really invest the 90 minutes to watch this movie because you'll get such great characters with both of those two in the lead roles. But back to what Dan was saying, he goes there and he starts digging up this I believe it's kind of not quite solid concrete yet. So he's kind of poking at it, digging up. Astra's getting in his way, and what he finds is a set of is bones. He finds bones and clothes, but the clothes are for a much larger individual than we've seen in the movie so far, and it also has a belt clip with initials on it, and they believe that it is the belt clip of someone who was harassing Clyde years earlier. I believe the case that Nick was hired to work on, and so they like, oh, maybe this guy is the one who is dead. He's the one who's dead here, and it's another body to tie to the Clyde character. They already assume that he murdered the secretary, and they already think that he probably murdered the other guy as well to keep it quiet or something like that. So now they're tying a third murder to this Clyde character, who we haven't seen since the beginning of this movie. We haven't seen him at all.
And then, of course, we don't see the bookkeeper at all either until the very beginning of the movie. Well, he comes back into the story as well because he's now starting to piece things together in his own head. Like, okay, let me talk to Nick about this. And so he kind of gives Nick some very much needed information. And that's when Nick, when he investigates the body that they found or the bones or whatever that they find the bullet, but then they find a piece of shrapnel in the leg
shin bone,
of the bones, which
we find out that Clyde had an old war wound.
Clyde had a war wound where he had a piece of shrapnel because Nick had talked to him, but previous to the movie. I mean, they don't have this conversation in the movie. This is before the movie. They must have known each other before the movie.
Yes.
So then this is his way of eliminating Clyde as the murderer. So then he starts thinking, okay, what do I do now Tanner tells me all this information, the bookkeeper, about his daughter and the money and the bonds and all of this stuff. He's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a dinner party, and I'm going to, no pun intended, we're going to round up the usual suspects and we're going to get them to come to my swanky dinner party. And so him and Nick and Nora have to dress up nice and pretty and whatnot. She's got a nice dress on, and some of the people have to be coerced and brought.
They got to be forcefully grabbed by the police.
Was knocked down in their apartments or whatever. They had dragged out of their houses to come to this dinner party. So needless to say, he gets them all at the dinner party, and like an Inspector Clouseau, a Hercule Poirot, he starts talking to each of them, and he starts asking them questions, and he starts figuring it all out. And needless to say, the murder is discovered at the end of the movie. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how he gets to the point where this guy is the murderer, except that the guy has a gun and he tries to shoot him. So I guess
there is a lot of dialogue in this dinner party scene. Apparently William Powell was frustrated because of because there was so much dialogue that he had to memorize for this, and it is a worry. He's going through each character and their perceived connection to this theory that he is proposing. There's even a point in it where his wife goes, "How'd you get to that point?" He's like, "I have no idea, other than the fact that that's the only way it fits into my story." And it's like he kind of like he's making this up as he's going along, not making it up, but he's trying to put these pieces together any way he possibly can. And it's so great because it also plays with us as an audience. It plays with us because there's moments where he'll mention somebody, and the context in the dialogue he's given makes us believe that, oh, that's the killer, and then it's like, no, it's not, and then like, oh, that's the killer, oh no, it's not. And the way the characters are reacting is like, what? No, what? They're all acting with like dread and like defensiveness, so you kind of you think they may be the murderer. And it's a really fantastically well written, well done scene. But like Dan said, it is heavy and difficult to kind of keep the train on the tracks in your own head as a viewer.
He even throws Inspector Guild under the bus in the dinner. I mean, it's like, don't mention that. No.
Yeah, he starts to sweat too, because he's like, maybe I screwed this up big time. Maybe I'm way off track on who I believe, because everybody's under the assumption that that Clyde is still the killer. And nobody knows that that's his body other than Nick. He's the only one that mentions it, and he proves it, saying that he had shrapnel in his leg, and that those clothes were there just as a plant to lead us down that road.
Yeah. And so he proves it to everybody that why not wasn't the killer, that the killer was at that table. And of course, then everybody starts looking at each other. You know, some people say, why am I sitting next to this person and whatnot? And then
he orchestrates everybody to be sat in a certain place. And then of course, as the pressure keeps, he purposely goes at the ex-wife really heavily. Mimi, he keeps going at her, and then the lawyer, and then you see underneath the table, all you see is somebody's hand on a small gun, and you don't know who it is quite at that moment. And then when it cuts away, the lawyer tries to get up and shoot him, and he knocks him out, and then Macaulay, and then he knocks him out. And it's interesting that it's Macaulay because of his they seem to be very friendly throughout the movie. You know what I mean? Like, you don't assume it's Macaulay because it's the lawyer of Clyde, so it's a very trusted person. It's somebody who Nick apparently knew well enough. Where all the way at the beginning of the movie, the Macaulay character comes to their hotel room and talks with them as if they're old friends. You know, and so it's kind of surprising in that respect. And then after this great sequence, the movie kind of wraps up in a very, Hollywoodish type, nice bow way, where they're on where Nick, Nora, Dorothy, and her fiance, boyfriend, whatever, are all on a train together, and it's all kind of a nice, like, wrapped up happy ending where, like, they go, they're drinking, there's flowers, I believe, they're having a great time, and then they both separate, and then there's a nice romantic kiss, and that's. And the last shot of the movie is the dog on top of the upper bunk bed, and he kind of lies down and covers his eyes as his presumed parents are making out. And then the movie closes, and that's how it ends. What is interesting is that you mentioned Hercule Poirot, you mentioned like murder mysteries that'll happen in the future, and it kind of leads us to the point why this movie is so essential, because it is 1934. And this movie is kind of the basis for every other murder mystery movie that would come out after this, or TV show, or whatever. It's very much a foundational part of that genre. It is a detective story. It's a murder mystery, but it's not film noir. Film noir wouldn't be around yet until around 1940, so it predates film noir when it comes to any type of detective work or anything like that. So it's a really great foundational film. It's not only the foundation of a franchise, but it's the foundation of kind of a detective genre. at least when it comes to movies. I know they had detective books, you know, with Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that. They even had, I believe, they had Sherlock Holmes type things before here, but The Thin Man is really a foundational part of the genre. It's also mentioned to note that it's based on a book known as The Thin Man, written by Dashiell Hammett, who many people probably remember with Dashiell Hammett because he wrote several books that got made into movies. One that comes to mind right off the top of my head is The Maltese Falcon, which was actually made into a movie right around the mid 1930s, and then of course the most famous one with Humphrey Bogart, directed by John Huston. That's the one everybody remembers. You know, this the stuff dreams are made of, things like that. He did several of those, and I think that's why the story is so interesting. He was a great writer as well. He and also W.S. Van Dyke. A lot of people don't know who that is. I honestly didn't quite know who he was too until I got into older classic movies. But he had a pretty long career of about 25 years. His last movie he made was in 1942, and he directed over 90 movies in 25 years. He was known as One Take Woody because his movies were so quickly made because he only liked to use one take in his movies. That's why he's able to make them so fast and make so many of them. And he mostly made them throughout the silent era. If you look at his filmography on IMDb, most of his movies are in like the 20s and then the 30s and 40s. So he did a lot in the silent era and then early talkies. But yeah, fascinating director who made amazing amount of movies.
Oh, sure. I mean,
that's crazy.
90 movies in 25 years. Christopher Nolan's been working 20 years. He's done 10 movies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Same thing. Stanley Kubrick worked from the 1960s all the way up until 1999, and he made what, a dozen movies, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, yeah. I mean, that's, you know, when you think about all the films and the 52 must-see movies and why they matter, and this book and the series that we're doing, even Swing Time, which Steven and I just did, you think about the story and the music in Swing Time, and now you think about the things that influenced this film or were influenced by this film. The same thing with the musicals that were influenced by Swing Time. You know, there's a reason why these films are in this book. They are very influential to future filmmakers, and you know, Agatha Christie and some of these great people have really taken this kind of a murder mystery genre, if you call it a genre. Maybe it's a subgenre, I don't know, and really went off with it and really done a great job. So yeah, this is a fun watch because this is the first time for me. I know it was multiple times for you, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I can understand why it's in the book and why it's so essential. But Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Cabzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Cabzilla Productions.
And you can find me at Dan Cabral on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. We only have a couple more episodes left, and then in April, we're going to start season 2. So I'm really fired up about season 2, but we still have 2 more episodes of season 1 left. So for Andrew and myself, good night.